Good afternoon, and welcome to this special digital workshop from Episcopal Parish Network in partnership with Grace-Based Films. My name is Joe Swimmer, and I am the Executive Director here at Episcopal Parish Networks. And we are so pleased to have you joining us today for this discussion workshop about Case for Love, a feature film that's being released soon by Grace-Based Films, and based on the principles that our Presiding Bishop Michael Curry likes to talk about when he is out and with us. Bishop Curry, as many of you all probably know, had a recent fall and had some surgery and is in recovery right now near his home in Raleigh. And so our prayers are with him in this moment. We hope that his recovery is swift and complete, and that he gets back out there on the road to share about the power of love. We are looking forward to him being with us to celebrate his primacy as it ends in next year and we elect a new presiding bishop. He will be with us at our annual conference next March 6th through 9th in Houston, Texas. We welcome you to join us there. You can find out more at the website that is in the chat. As many of you all are already doing, we ask that you put your name and where you are dialing in from into the chat for our panelists' sake. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it off to the team that created this really compelling new film. And we're going to hear a little bit about it and where you can go to see it when it's released. So Brian, off to you.
Great. Thank you. And I'm Brian Eady, the director and producer of A Case for Love. And before I start, I have to say thank you to Joe Swimmer and to SEEP, now EPN. Some of you that we've met over the years while at SEEP and now EPN were the little creative dreamer folks that were always hovering and bouncing around between rooms and stalking some of you. So we are so grateful. It's been an amazing journey for us to explore the power of film and how it can speak to people's lives and be a tool for good in the church. And so we're just very grateful to be here and grateful to Joe. I'm going to have Xenia introduce herself, and then we'll work around the room a little bit, and then we'll start sharing a little bit about the film.
Hi, my name is Xenia LeBlanc. I'm the editor of A Case for Love. It's very nice to be here. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, my name is Steve Hall. I'm one of the associate producers for the movie, formerly with St. Michael and All Angels in Dallas for years. Huge fan of Joe and SEEP at EPN. I love the work that they're doing and the work that you all are doing, and pleasure to be here.
Hi, my name is Steve Fleenor. I was also one of the producers on the film, but primarily my job here is accounting and finance, and I know no one came to hear about that. So I'm going to serve as today's moderator. So we'll kick it off here. Brian, why don't you tell us, give us a brief overview of the film?
Yeah, so we'll start very shortly, and then I'll show the trailer, and then we can kind of unpack more about it. But essentially, at the end of the day, it is an exploration of Bishop Michael Curry's beautiful message of unselfish love. This notion that we as a society have to figure out how to live into this notion of unselfish love, just brother to brother, sister to sister, or we're seeing the effects of that when it doesn't happen in society. So the film is a journey across America, engaging with ordinary people, notable figures, man on the street, and then ultimately sitting down with Bishop Curry to say, this is what we saw. So before we unpack that a little bit, we thought we'd share the trailer for those that haven't seen it, and then we'll come back.
Is love dead?
What do you think?
Feels like people are becoming more selfish.
Racial inequality.
The disturbing surge of racist attacks against Asian Americans.
People now hate each other if they disagree.
We never really get to know the other. We're scared of the other.
We don't want you here!
It's hard not to take it personally.
What we are seeing is just the tip of the iceberg.
We will either learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools.
Sometimes things are happening around us, and we're not even attentive to others.
There are clearly tensions that are not helping us to hear the truth.
For those who are struggling with trauma, people don't listen to them. They hear them, they don't listen.
I was just a runner, and no one ever asked me what I was running from.
Kids are not running from home just because they want to run. They're running from something.
When playing NFL football ends, it's very difficult. There's anger and sadness. I try to choose grace, but it's a battle.
When love is not there, then you will see hate is coming.
Then it's up to you as to whether or not you rise to the challenges.
Kindness is universal. It's free, it requires no effort.
What we give comes back twofold.
Anyone that helps you get through your struggle is considered unselfish love to me.
Unselfish love is missing whenever hate triumphs over hope.
The world is overwhelming.
And hate has infected our political and public life. Or maybe it's been there all along and it's finding new outlets.
And so then the next question is that how we're leaving?
Love doesn't have a thing to do with whether you're red or blue.
Our family just decided, we're just going to love and we're just going to do it big.
Love is the most important piece in all of this.
We were made for each other. And I believe we were also made for the God who made us. And that's the ultimate community. All of us together in the God who made us.
There was some side glance going with Xenia because we know every frame of this thing, and I'm like, oh, did we do this? Did we do that? Yeah. So it's
every little sound, every little part of that trailer.
Yeah. And we're excited that this film, as some of you know, has been invited to be in 1,000 theaters on January 23rd. And so that's what all of this is about. It's a remarkable invitation for films like this that come from groups like this to be seen in theater. So we're incredibly grateful for that.
And Brian, that's one night only on January 23rd, correct?
It is one night only, correct, as of now.
So Brian, maybe we should back up a little bit and talk about who is Grace-Based Films, what's its mission, how did it get started, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Steve Fleenor and I attend All Saints Beverly Hills and have been there for many, many, many years in various roles. And about 8 or 9 years ago, something to that effect, we were both on the vestry. And while early in our first or second vestry meeting, we realized very quickly that this is going to be about finances and stewardship and pledging shortfalls and all those things. Steve has a background in finance and knows all those things and was an expert in all those things, but I was not that kind of person, and another new member on our class was not either. So the thought was that we could either spend 4 years rubber stamping everything that Steve says and shares through the group, or we could see if we could activate other kinds of gifts in our parish. And because of where we are, the geography of where we are in Beverly Hills, we had a lot of people that were involved in storytelling. So we started dreaming up, maybe we could start telling stories that had faith elements in them that weren't being told in Hollywood. And to me, it felt like a lot of the stuff, especially back then, that was coming through Hollywood that had faith elements to it, had a message of, if your faith is strong enough, then your football team wins, or you find reconciliation in your marriage, or you find healing. And I loved that if that was somebody's journey, that there were stories for that. But for everybody else who didn't have that journey, I think there were a lot of people that were seeing those stories and thought, okay, there must be something wrong with me then, because I'm not finding healing or reconciliation or employment. So we wanted to see if we could wrestle with some of those messier stories of faith journeys. So we started with a little short film called Reconcile. It was an 8-minute piece that we filmed in my home and at All Saints. The poster for it is right back there. It was a beautiful piece. The theme of that one is loving the other in our life, and everybody has a different other. So we filmed it. We had this wonderful gathering. Stephanie Spellers came out from the National Church. We had executives from Warner Brothers. We had people from the parish, and we just talked about the power of media and story and how that in faith and how those intersect. And then we reached out to our rector, Steve Huber, at the time. I said, well, Steve, what do we do with this now that it's done? And because it was all new at the time. And so I said, do you mind if I send it out? And he said, yes. So I tracked down the emails of 99 bishops and just sent the link and said, here it is. It's free if it's of any value. And the response was such that we thought, okay, we might be onto something. So then a couple of years later, we were exploring the next project and wanted to take a bigger leap of faith and do a full feature film. And that one was called This Day Forward. And that's the poster back there. And the theme of that one was facing the unimaginable on a faith journey. And everybody's unimaginable might be different, but this one was a true story of a Lutheran worship leader who was diagnosed with a brain tumor at 38. And to me, the power of it was, I had no idea how he could continue to get up in front of 1,000 people every Sunday, singing about the glory of God while he knew that his life was being taken away from him. And I just thought that was incredibly powerful. So we decided to tell this film. We went into Iowa. We filmed it there in the small town with the local people, with the family as much as humanly possible. Got done with it, had a beautiful screening in Los Angeles, and then traveled all over the country in churches and schools and community centers all over the country, sharing the film and having Q&A with it. And then the Lutheran Church of Australia invited us in 2019 to come tour and do the same thing with churches and community centers all over that. So now we were grooving. We thought, okay, we got this thing figured out. So we started looking at our next project, and we were in the Holy Land. And Bob Daniels was our interim at the time and had taken a group from All Saints to the Holy Land in early 2019. And while we were wrapping it up and then having some drinks at the American Colony Hotel, as I think a lot of people do, Steve and I were starting to dream up, like, what could be next? What spoke to us about this? And a certain part of our visit to the Holy Land spoke to us, and we started kind of dreaming up a story that was centered around the 10 days between the Ascension and Pentecost, and for beautiful reasons. So that was January of 2019. In May, VTS graciously hosted a roundtable conversation about that, of like, what would that look like? How would it be useful to churches? And we invited clergy from all over the country to speak into that. And then by July, we took a group of 5 storytellers and 5 clergy people to the Holy Land to really sit into the story and unpack it and see how it might be of best use. So that's 2019. And then we started crafting that summer. We started crafting the story and get our way to SEEP at the time, the infamous SEEP of 2020. And we're there and we're meeting people and talking about this new project called The Upper Room that we were thinking would be our next one. And then we were approached by Chuck Robertson, Canon Robertson, who had said, okay, that all sounds really interesting, but you ever thought about doing a documentary? That Bishop Curry was writing a book and coming out with a book that was, as we know, is half his message and half his journey. And I think there was interest in, okay, it's one thing to write and preach about this notion of unselfish love, but what does that actually look like with real people on the road? And so we said, well, that sounds amazing. We would love to do that. And then 10 days later, COVID hit and the world turned upside down, and we rushed home to take care of our parish like all of you did. And then later in that year, we were approached again of like, okay, let's revisit this now. And things were able to be left at a point at the end of 2020 where we could start exploring this in 2021. So then that's where A Case for Love started. Did I miss anything, Steve?
Well, I would add one thing, and maybe you said I was reading these questions, all these questions we're getting. We're no longer under All Saints. We're independent of All Saints. We figured out pretty quickly that our aspirations for what we want to do is bigger than what can be supported financially by one parish. So now we're our own nonprofit, and fortunately for this film, we've raised money from all over the country, but very generous donors, both churches, seminaries, generous people, and then we've had a few, lucky enough to get a few grants as well. So yeah, but I think otherwise, Brian, you got everything. So there are a couple of questions that keep popping up here. And one is, how do we see the film? How do we know if it's in our town? And Steve Hall is going to cover that in a little while, but it's all on our website. It's easy to figure out. And then Brian, you'll be happy to hear this. We're getting lots of questions about how do I buy a t-shirt?
Ah, yes. So these t-shirts, you see us all wearing them. These were created for our crew. So a little more about the filming of the story itself. So we started dreaming this up in early 2021, and then by May, June, we were ready to hit the road. And it was right, as we probably remember, it was right in that sweet spot of COVID in some ways, that the first vaccine had come out before I think Omicron, is that right?
Omicron, yeah.
Yeah, that boost happened. So there was this window of time where we could have 8 people in 3 vans and safely engage with people all over the country. And that's what we did. So we loaded up, we drove the entire country. I think it was like 11,000 miles ultimately that we drove for it. And we knew that we wanted the film to be about ordinary people, that we wanted ordinary people to watch it and hopefully be inspired and see themselves in it in some way and feel like, okay, I can do that too. So the film, we went on the road. There's 14 deep dive stories where we spent the full day with a variety of ordinary folks, military people, adoption, folks from Thistle Farms,
immigrants.
What's that? Refugee stories, sexual identity stories, sexual trafficking stories. So we have 14 of those stories that we wove together into 7 chapters. And each of the chapter takes 2 or 3 of those stories, weaves them together beautifully, that Xenia will talk about, under a universal question or theme of love and loss, or being dealt a bad hand in life, or answering the call, or volunteerism. So we wove those into those chapters. And then we also did probably 250 man on the street interviews, where we just pulled over on the Brooklyn Bridge and downtown Indianapolis and Nashville and farms in Pennsylvania and homeless shelters. And every time asked people, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words unselfish love? And where have you seen it? Where have you seen its absence? Where does that lead into hate? So there's 200 plus of those. That led us to 14 or so cameos with notable figures. So we were with politicians like Pete Buttigieg and John Danforth and Jim Clyburn. We were with rabbis and Muslim leaders. We were with actors like Sam Waterston, Jon Meacham, Kelly Brown Douglas, and Becca Stevens. These wonderful array of perspectives where we did short interviews with them. And then eventually we sat down with Bishop Curry and said, okay, here's what we saw. And as we all know, Bishop Curry lands the plane beautifully whenever he's involved in something, and we knew that he would. And so it was a beautiful opportunity to sit for a day with him and say, okay, this is what we came across. This film is not a dissertation on love. We did not seek out experts on love. These are ordinary people. I think of the 14 deep dive stories, I think 4 or 5 of them were scheduled when we started driving. And it really was being in Minneapolis and somebody hearing like, oh, you're going to be in Indianapolis, you need to be with the Samples. Oh, you're going to get to Jacksonville, you really need to be with the couple there. And it was the spirit, it was a leap of faith, and it was a spirit-driven kind of journey. But that's what the film ultimately is a journey story that hopefully creates a space for people and organizations to hear stories. I felt like my job was to create a space where somebody felt safe enough to be vulnerable enough to tell their story. And then through the film, as we start wrestling with things that might be triggers for any of us, I don't think anybody that watches it feels like it's propaganda or is told that they should believe something or feel something. But instead, at the end of the day, this is Bradley's story, or this is Jason Soul's story, or this is Christina's story. And I think the power of story is that it allows us to touch lives in a different way. And that's what I'm really excited about.
And also to relate, I feel, right? We always talked about this, Brian, that everyone can see themselves a little bit in those stories. And it's not some sort of a, for lack of a better term, like beautified or made nice kind of story. It's a real story of real people. And I feel like that's what this film does really well. It feels very relatable, and you can find a little piece of yourself in it, or everyone could.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part of the power of film too, is it doesn't, like, this film is not perfect. You know, it was not made to be it is, Zenny and I had many there's a lot of lost sleep and wrestling, and you know, everybody I think that's around it would have made it different. I think church leaders would have had a perspective that skewed maybe this, that, or this way. And then when we sit with organizations that do racial justice or democracy care or volunteerism, they would have skewed it more this way. And so I think one of the real things that we took seriously and prayerfully was, how do we do right by all of these kinds of desires? And in doing that, it becomes a messier thing. And that is terrifying, but fulfilling. Yeah.
Okay, so we have one question from Joe Swimmer, so I'll definitely address that one since it's from him. He asks, will churches or dioceses be able to host viewings the way the Philadelphia 11 has been distributed thus far? So we would encourage everybody to see it in a theater. It's just, it's a magical experience to see this film in a theater. It was built for a theater. We use the very best camera equipment, the best sound equipment. And while it's great in a parish hall, it's really a different experience in a theater. But to answer the question, probably eventually it will be you'll be able to license it for a church showing. But what will happen is we'll have this theatrical run, and then we will have a run with a streamer like a Netflix or HBO Max. And they will have the exclusive rights to it for some period of time. And then eventually, yes, you'll be able to show it in a local church or that kind of thing.
And let me add a little bit to that, Steve, before I hand it over to Xenia. I think as filmmakers, we always love seeing our things in film. So that's the selfish part, or in theaters, that's the selfish part of it. But it really was, and I think the desire from the beginning is bearing fruit, that it was built to reach people who wouldn't necessarily enter our sanctuaries and parish halls. And there is something about, we always, I think, originally thought it was going to have to start as a streamer, because that's just the way Hollywood is navigating right now. There's very little theatrical that's happening. And when Fathom Events offered this to us, I think one of the things that excited us the most about it is that if the film is about bringing people together in community and having a shared experience, so that way there's a dialogue about a shared experience. If everybody saw it for the first time on Netflix at home by themselves, or if only like-minded people saw it for the first time with other like-minded people, then maybe we miss the opportunity for that first step. And so it's my hope that the people that are not participating in church or not participating in the Episcopal Church now all of a sudden are exposed to something that's born out of the beauty of the Episcopal Church and is now mainstream enough that there's a relatability to what's happening in our churches that expands outside of that. And I think that's the power of theater too, is that it normalizes and empowers these kinds of things. And then hopefully, as Steve will talk about, the next step is that it goes into parishes and gets involved in that. But I would love, like, this film didn't magically appear once we went and put cameras on. And so I think Steve was going to ask Xenia a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you every bit about every step of this was very difficult. The fundraising, the filming, securing the stories, getting celebrities to show up to be on camera. But but then after all that was done, we gave weeks and weeks of filming, and I think we had, Brian, was it 300,000 words? We gave it to Xenia and said, "Hey, Xenia, make a movie out of this." So, so it's to me, I'm in awe of what she was able to pull off, and of course, she worked with Brian on that. But Xenia, I think it's really interesting, your process, the creative process that goes along. Would you share how you went about making this wonderful film?
Sure. First of all, I want to say that it definitely was very intimidating at first because there were so many amazing stories and so much material that it was really hard to choose. It almost feels like you want to choose the right thing. You wonder what it is that is the right thing in this. What am I doing with this? How am I shaping this? Is this shaping into something that is the message, or what this message is going to be? And a lot of the times it was my process was, I think, listening was the key. And I found that really helped me to just to listen to all these stories and make notes and find what really impacted me emotionally and how I felt this could impact other people. And then Brian and I would talk about it. And I was really lucky because Brian and I really understand each other really well. So it felt like we were on the same page most of the time. I also want to say I'm really, really grateful because this is my first documentary, and I'm really, really grateful for the trust of Steve and Brian, because I know it was a big leap of faith and to give me that story, to shape it. And I'm really, really grateful. I really enjoyed working on the film, and I felt like, you know, sometimes you get projects and you work and they're exciting, they're fun. And then, you know, by the end of the day, you're like, oh, I'm done. And this is great. This film, every day that I was working on it, I felt like I was fulfilled, not only on the level of, on an emotional level, but I felt very spiritually fulfilled because it felt like those stories really resonated, and the amount of vulnerability that it showcased, I think it was also due to Brian being a really good listener. And he asked the right questions, and it felt like the people really opened up and felt comfortable enough to share their stories. And yeah, I guess the process was we broke it down into different sections and chapters, like Brian mentioned. And after that, it was a very long process of creating these chapters, and they were really way too long. And then slowly kind of taking away certain pieces and seeing what was more powerful and what was more important. But it was really hard because, again, the stories were so emotional and they were so beautiful. I was telling Brian sometimes I had to step away during the day just because I would get really emotional listening to the stories. They were so impactful and personal. But I guess, I still, honestly, to answer the question of how I shaped the story, it was magic. It was a lot of belief and listening and relating to what people said. And then again, going back to the drawing board and seeing, okay, how does this fit into the narrative of the whole film? And then eventually it was making some hard decisions and you know, choosing a specific piece and saying, okay, we'll have to leave this out. I think if we could, would make this film like 3 hours, not more, if we could. But I think what was left in there, and also getting feedback from people, we did show the film, right? Like the film was shown, and getting the feedback and listening to those kind of moments of what resonated with people. And some people did come back and say, this story really impacted me a lot and really helped me to go through something or work through something in my family, or, you know, something that I personally was feeling or struggling with. And then we would go back and make notes about it and make sure that we kept those moments and we specifically focused on delivering those messages and not getting rid of them. And then what was interesting, I think one of the most interesting things for me was listening to how these stories naturally connected. There were some moments where people would talk about some sort of a therapy or a certain experience, and then it would naturally feel like, oh wow, I can blend it into the next story. And it felt so interesting and organic. Like, that's why I say it's magic, or because it felt like, wow, this was, and I would ask Brian, so did you plan it this way? And Brian's like, no, we didn't plan it. We just sat down and listened and let people talk. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is beautiful, because you can see those things correlating. And it was so exciting to put the chapters together and shape them into these stories. And they just, for me, they organically came together, but of course it wasn't easy, but it was one of those things where there's so much love and so much heart in this film that it felt like the story kind of revealed itself as we went. And I think it required a lot of trust. And again, I'm so grateful to Brian for trusting. And it was never a process of, you know, you should do it this way or it should be that way. It was always a conversation. It was always, give it a try. Let's see what we can discover. And we discovered so many beautiful moments together and just felt really exciting. And I'm really grateful for that. It's rare you get to create like that. Sometimes it's really hard to find people that trust and really have a lot of trust in the process. And Brian is one of those people. Just, you know, I'm going to let it, I'm just going to see what we discover. Let's go on a journey. And it felt exciting every day. Felt like, let's find out what we find out today. Let's see how this talks to us today. And it just, I feel like it paid off. It really did.
I agree. You did a beautiful job, Xenia. So now we're going to switch over to Steve Hall, who many of you may know as a church communicator. He was for years at St. Michael and All Angels, and very involved in that community. So Steve came on to help us with communications and also to specifically manufacture collateral material that makes it easy for parishes to promote the movie internally if they so wish. So Steve, why don't you tell us about what's available and take it from there.
Sounds good. Hey everybody, it's good to see you. Well, actually, we're not actually seeing you, but I can see the names, and it's lovely to see you all again. Before I get into that, I want to make a personal comment because of the team. I'm kind of the later one that came into it, and the thing that drew me in, the thing that just constantly, my mind is constantly overwhelmed with, I can't think of another message that this country especially needs more than anything else, that is just reiterated in 14 different ways and through all these little moments, and having an opportunity to be a part of this is, I think, ministering to me more than almost anything else. It is a beautiful movie. It is challenging. I don't think she'll hate me for saying it. We had a chance to be part of one of the screenings, and my wife Lainey literally had to leave the theater because she was like ugly crying, because it will hit you hard. The beauty, the overwhelming sense of the notion of unselfish love. So that's what drew me into it, and I so appreciate the work that Steve and Brian and Xenia have been doing. So what I want to do is I want to quickly take you on a tour, and let me share my screen. And let's see here, we're gonna go here and share screen, and we're gonna take this one. So this is the website. Please, for some reason things aren't displaying correctly, just dump it in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets fixed. The URL has just been put in. It's acaseforlovemovie.com, and the probably some of the most important things that you're looking for right off the bat that are questions in the chat is buy tickets here, watch trailer here, and then we're going to go right up to the top, and there is a theater link in the navigation. Click that, and it's going to take you here where you can see a representation of all of these are not the actual theaters, these are the cities. Just be very clear about that. These are the cities across the country that are currently already on board. It's important to note that Fathom Events has a massive network, and they are still in the process of bringing more and more on. So this list will be expanding right up until the event. If for some reason you don't see your city represented in this, absolutely use this link right here. Group sales, you can fill out those forms there. So going back to the homepage again real quickly, a great way to keep track of what's happening with the movie, especially as we do the final lead up, is go ahead and take a minute and throw your contact information and join the A Case for Love newsletter. And we'll keep you up to date on anything that's going on. Special shout out to some of our partners. I want to take you next to the participate tab and just show you there is a place on here. Number one, you can download the journal directly. More about that in just a second, but I want to point you to these social sharing tools. We're going to be putting here some tools that you can quickly download and share on your own, point them to the website, So our goal is to do everything in a way that makes it easy for the world crowdsourcing to easily be able to help us get the word out, in addition to the paid advertising and everything else. Because we know that our friends and our friends of friends and our family, we listen to each other, and when we're talking about it, when we're cultivating that, people tend to pay more attention. So we want to help give you the tools and make sure that you have easy ways to help with this movement. And it is a movement. It is a movement of love and challenging introspection. One of the best ways that you can help us, if you're so moved, is following us on social. And as we post regularly through either organic or paid advertising or just our normal posting, we would love for you to share it. Share it with your friends and family, and help us perpetuate and spread the word. That's such a huge help for us. Moving along now, we're going to go back up to the navigation, and I want to take you to the resource tab. This is going to be one of the bigger things. And on this, you'll see that we have a download area. And really quickly, I just want to show you the things that you're going to be able to download. We have created, with the help of other agencies, a guide that I'm going to go into and show you a bit of in just a second, that includes the journal, but it's a group facilitation guide, or you could, as an adult, go through it on your own. We also have a student curriculum guide that's meant specifically for 7th to 12th grade students. Those are for download. And then for the month of Unselfish Love, which begins January 23rd, after the beginning of the movie, and then goes for 30 days, we're going to be challenging everybody across the country to download this journal and to each day chronicle something that you saw or that you did of unselfish love. We've also got the artwork here. We've got the press release, so you can see or use that. An overview one sheet, which explains everything about the movie. And then the organizer drop-in content. And we're going to kind of jump to those right now. To get those things, you can download the curriculums here, click on media and organizer access for everything else, and you'll see there's a zip package that you can download that has this all. So right off the bat, to show you the artwork, this is the official artwork. You can print this out as a poster. There's 24 by 36 inch versions and 11 by 17 flyer versions for you to be able to print out. Then this is the adult guide and journal. And in each of these, the first few pages have some similarities. But then you'll see here where it takes the chapters of the movie condensed into themes, and there's storylines and questions to contemplate through, to reflect on the movie, and to help us not take advantage of the moment and find out what we really think. When you go back to the poster, what it says, you decide. This case for love is the challenge in this movie is that you are arguing this case with yourself. What do you believe? Where do you land? So you get to decide that for yourself. And these curriculums are meant to kind of walk you through that journey a bit. Then, of course, there's the youth one. And there's certain parts that are specifically for grades 7, 8 through 9 through 10, 11, 12, but then also a section where it is more geared for 9th grade through 12th grade. And those are additional questions for the kids. Then, of course, you have the journal, and the journal gives you a contemplation, food for thought at the bottom of each page, and then just space for you to talk about your experience, something that you're intentionally setting to do, or something that you're observing that perhaps somebody does for you. Next, you have the one sheet, which is really more organizer and media based, but it's going to give you all of the details, the technical details about the film and the backgrounds and things like that. And then finally, this is, I think, as a communicator, knowing everybody is super busy, organizers and leaders are super busy. So what we've tried to do is give you a tool for drop-in content that will make your life a lot easier and will go much more quickly. It comes in sections where you have an introduction, and then the first part of the messaging, you can choose a shorter or a longer option, and then come down to section 2 and a shorter or a longer option, section 3, and then section 4, filling out whether or not you want to also talk about the month of unselfish love. And you can kind of mix and match that content to fit the different insertion points you may have in your deployments. And then finally, by popular demand in the chat, this is a preview of the t-shirt. Love over hate, love over indifference, ignorance, ego, barriers, borders, over and over and over again. And that is what we are talking about. So I'm going to unshare now just long enough to see if there's any pertinent questions that have come out of this. If not, I want to encourage all of you today to visit the website, acaseforlovemovie.com. On almost all of our socials, you can just hashtag #ACaseForLove and it's going to come up all over the place. If you have any questions whatsoever, you're needing help with something that you're doing, please email us at media@gracebasedfilms.com or .org, and we'll be happy to do what we can to help you.
Yeah, so Steve, we've gotten a few questions about people not seeing their town. There's not a theater in their town. So just know we didn't get to select the theaters. The distributor selects the theater. So we're not leaving anybody out. We would love for it to be available everywhere. So if you don't see your, again, if you don't see your theater in your town, go to the group sales, click on the group sales button on the homepage, and it will ask you to fill out a form, and it'll even say which theater would you like to see it in. First choice, second choice, third choice, and then our group salesperson will try to get the film in the theater that you're interested in.
Yeah, theaters are in the business of selling tickets. So if they know that there's a group somewhere that wants to come in and buy tickets, they're apt to open up space to do that for sure.
And absolutely, I'm going to quickly reshare to show them exactly where that form is, and so they see what it looks like, and share. Okay, so if you're on the website, this is the theater page up here in the navigation. I've clicked on
you're not sharing.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
Actually have to, nope, that's the wrong thing. Apologies. Just nope, that is the right thing. No. Technology is great as long as you actually do it correctly. Sorry, one moment. There we go. Okay, so you'll see we are back on the website. I'm up here in the theater tab, and I've clicked on this link right here, which opens up a form monitored by Fathom Events and our group salesperson. So there's a number of different things this form covers. But what Steve was just mentioning is your theater preference and the theater name and things like that. If they get requests here that are not already in the list, they're going to start initiating a conversation to see if that theater can join the 1,000 or so theaters that are already involved. So that is your method to do that. And then, of course, we'll be updating the map as significant changes happen.
And I would just love to share real quick, Steve, before we go to the question, and if Steve can unshare his screen. One one of the things we didn't touch on, this film is funded entirely by donations. So we don't own any of the proceeds from the film as filmmakers. We don't own them. The people that funded it don't own them. Bishop Curry doesn't own them. All the proceeds go to telling more stories that serve more people, back to the nonprofit whose sole mission is to use film as an extension of the gospel. So when we have this plea to folks, I hope nobody feels like, oh, Brian's trying to rally people to go, support Brian's movie. Like, the theater business and Hollywood in general is reticent to allow stories like this, and especially from denominations like ours, until they see that there are audiences that will engage in the process of buying tickets. So that's why the 23rd becomes so critically important, is that the bigger the success of the 23rd, the more likely they are to explore and initiate future stories like this. So just wanted to clarify that.
So we've had a couple of questions about people wanting to learn more about the film, and then is there a PowerPoint presentation that they can use? So the answer to that question is there is a lot more information on the website. There is a PowerPoint presentation on the download page that Steve Hall showed you, and it goes through every chapter and says, who's featured in that chapter, what the theme of it is. So there's a ton more information on the website.
Mm-hmm. And to echo to that, if there's somebody that doesn't see something, or as a parish, they're like, oh, I wish you would have created this, and we haven't yet, we love hearing that, because then we can pull together something that makes it easier for you as well.
Brian, we've got a question about, is this available in Canada?
It is not. Fathom starts in the US. They do that with every film first. They do have international outreach, but they always start domestically to see. And the movie is right over 100 minutes. So it's like an hour 40. I just saw that question pop up. That's why I said it. Yeah.
Question about the name of the nonprofit is Grace-Based Films. And someone asked about getting on our newsletter list. Email info@gracebasedfilms.org, and we'll be happy to put you on our newsletter.
There's another question. Will part of the theater tickets go to fund the project, and any idea of what is the next production?
Yes, so that's what all of the proceeds will go, is towards the next project. And I will say, we've been asked that question a lot. Every time I think I know what it is, I'm usually wrong. But I do feel compelled for the next film to be centered on serving young people in some way. I think that I have teenage children and a lot of friends with children, and I think that there are things that our young people are dealing with and absorbing that we don't fully comprehend. And I think that media is part of the problem. So I think it also can be part of the answer. And so I think that the next one will be centered on young people in some way.
I see a comment from Reverend Wendy about a number of theaters that are not currently available in the Aspenvale, Colorado area. Please go to that link that I was just showing you. Put those in so that Fathom Events can start reaching out.
Yeah. And again, the power is in the group. If it's one person that would love for it to be in their town, Fathom's not going to activate a theater in that. But if they said 25, 50 plus, that's when they really listen and they open up a theater. Because the theater has to release a different movie they're already showing before they can open up an auditorium for something like this on a Tuesday night. So they want to know that they're in the business of selling tickets. One more thing as we go to these other tickets. So one of these really cool things. So in January, leading up to the event, I'm going to hit the road. Steve's going to be with me on part of this from the 1st through the 23rd. And to remind us and remind people, I love being with people. And so each day we're going to drive across the country and spotlight some example of existing unselfish love to remind the outside viewers of, like, that's why we made this in the first place, that we do live in a hopeful world. And contrary to the headlines that we're fed all of the time, there is good in the world. So we're going to be passing out t-shirts and posters and discussion guides and all kinds of things along the way. So some of those will be religious stops. Some of them will be individuals. They'll be secular. But if you're interested, or you're like, oh, you should, if you're going to do this, you should really come to Chicago and do Joe because he's doing remarkable things. Email us with that too, because we'll be going live every single day from some place in a really raw, simple way. And I think it's going to be a beautiful lead up to the event. So that tour will be the whole month of January. You can follow that on Facebook.
They're asking, can we get the t-shirts that we're wearing right now?
Literally the ones no, sorry.
No, you give it away.
sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I can tell you that there is a t-shirt link on the website up at the top of the navigation. I know t-shirts are going as part of a thank you for donations at certain levels. And then we're looking into a kind of a drop shipping type of thing if you just want to buy a t-shirt, but it's not in place yet. We kind of wanted to see if there was demand for, if people want the t-shirt. If you want a t-shirt, continue to let us know. There was questions about a hoodie. This is not a hoodie. I happen to have one that looks exactly like the t-shirt. However, I am a hoodie person. So if you want hoodies, you got to tell us.
And I'll tell you a quick story about these, that they do work. I think it's a powerful thing to put on just for me, for a reminder. I wear them every day, as my family knows. But Bishop Curry actually went to the Raleigh airport to get on an airline to check, buy his ticket. And the airline ticket had met us 3 months before, saw the t-shirt, bought his own t-shirt, and remembered once he saw Bishop Curry's name on the ticket, said, "Are you the guy about the documentary?" And so there is power in them.
Okay, so I think we're coming up on time here. And Brian, do you have anything else you want to add?
Tons of things, but no, my last thing is just a thank you again to Joe. But there was a lot of folks that made this possible that aren't here, and a lot of them are in the Episcopal Church. And VTS was a huge supporter from the day one of this kind of dreaming. Berkeley Divinity School has been a massive partner with us on this particular film. Alan Close Foundation has been great. The St. Michael All Angels and the All Angels Foundation, Trinity Wall Street, like none of this would have existed from the beginning. And there's no person more critical to the existence of this than Chuck Robertson, who's made so much of this happen from the beginning and all the way through. And then now all the beautiful parts of the Episcopal Church are coming on, and the Episcopal News and the Episcopal Communicators, and the Union of Black Episcopalians is doing a rollout. The Living Church did an article. So we are incredibly, incredibly grateful.
Steve, if I can add one thing, you're going to be receiving a recap, I think, of this from EPN. There's going to be some links to the things that we've talked about, just as a reminder for that. But I want to say, if you have any questions, email us at the info@gracebasedfilms.org. If you have media type questions, media@gracebasedfilms.org, and we'll do everything that we can to help you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.